Today we're going to be taking a first look at and going for a first ride on a budget bike that really tries to give you the most bang for your buck. It's right here, the Primos Dame. Primos is a brand new brand actually, out of Portland, Oregon, and it's led by Carlos and Pascual. They both happen to be from Chile, but they have very different backgrounds. One coming out of more engineering and the other out of biking. But after some frustration with the way the bike industry was going, with how bikes were either uber expensive or very cheap and unreliable, they decided to put their heads together and come up with something that they thought was the best of both worlds, that gave you reliability and performance without costing $1 million. So this is their first model that they've come out with, and it's a gravel bike. At its heart, it's a gravel bike. You can even tell a little bit if you have a keen eye. You might notice my saddle is a little bit taller than my bars. Not something that I typically go for, but that's just kind of the nature of this bike. But let's get into some of the details so you can understand why this thing is such a good deal. First off, let's start with the price. $800. So first off, this bike is a chromoly steel frame. And now you might think for $800, it's just going to be like straight gauge, nothing fancy, but it is double butted. And that butting is removing some of the material at different points along the tube to make it lighter, but also to give you some compliance to change up the way it feels. So it's got that going on, which is pretty amazing. But then you take a look and there's some other pretty cool things going on. This is based on 650B. So these are 27.5 is the other name for that. These are the Continental Terra hard packs in a 50 millimeter, which is basically 2 inches. It does have clearance in the rear for a 700 by 50 or a 29 by 2 if you wanted to go with that. Or you can go up to a 2.35 on the rear in the 650B. Nope, I just lied. You can go up to about a 2.1, maybe a smaller 2.2 on the rear. Up front, you can fit a 2.35 in a 650B or a 2.1-ish in a 700. So you do have pretty decent tire clearance if that's what you're wanting, that's what you're riding, things that are a little more rough, a little more chunky gravel. On the drivetrain front, we are running Microshift Sword, the 10-speed version. So this is a 1x setup. You can see right here, this is your shifters right here. A little different that it's separated like that, and the little tiny bit that I've ridden so far, it works great. And then you've got your other brake over there. Back here, it is running a quite large 44-tooth chainring, much bigger than I would typically be running, but it's working great so far. And then right here you have a 46-tooth cassette, so a ton of range there. I'm really interested. I've never ridden Sword, but I've heard really good things about it. And you can, if you wanted to go to a flat bar, this is compatible with the Advent series, so you could throw an Advent shifter on there with some flat bars. Coming up here, these are some Tektro brakes right here. So you got name brand on that. And if we just come down a little bit right there, you notice $800 through axles. That's pretty amazing. These wheels are actually tubeless compatible. I can't quite remember, couldn't find anything on it. I don't think they are taped or anything, but they are tubeless compatible. So you can set that up if you want, as well as the tires are, so you're good to go there. One thing that's really stood out to me on these bikes, and if you go look at their website, is actually just the design. And when I talked to Charlie, I asked him, I said, you know, like, man, whoever you've got doing your graphic design is really good. And he was like, oh, that's just us. Like, we're just doing it ourselves. I thought, man, that's really good. You go look at their website, it feels Portlandy, I guess. I don't know. It feels like you get their identity and what they're all about with some of their little features and things like that. It just is good. And then you got right there, born and raised Portland, Oregon. So pretty cool on this. One thing I really want to highlight on here is, again, going back to that value. You would think that at that price point, they would skimp on some things and maybe cut some corners, but they don't. The frame is out of Taiwan. It's out of the same factories as some of those bigger brands that you hear of. Other things, just little simple things. It's got Jaguar, so name brand housings on everything. And then even the flat pedals that they sent are not just plastic. Other things to highlight, the bike's got a really versatile design. You've got 2 bottle cages, which obviously I put one on. Up here, I threw this Craft Cadence top 2 back on to carry some stuff for this ride, but there are 3 pack mounts right there. You've got 3 pack mounts on the fork, as well as rack and fender mounts, and it's the same on the back. So whatever you want to do with this, you can do it. Okay, so for the first time ever, apparently somehow one of my files got corrupted, and that's where I talked about the geometry of this bike. Ignore the fact that it now has different handlebars on. I am swapping Redshift kitchen sink bars on because that's the first stage of my tinkering. So this is a size large. It comes in medium, large, and extra large. Head tube angle wise, we'll start off with that. In the medium, it's a 71 degree head tube. Large and extra large, you get a 72. So very steep, but about what you'd expect on a standard gravel bike. Seat tube wise, it's coming in at 74 degrees. So you're a little more over that bottom bracket, which will help balance the bike out a little bit because it's got 425 chain stays. Gives it a pretty lively rear end. Bottom bracket drop is 70 mils, which is nice and low for a little more stability. But with that head tube angle and the shorter rear end, it still can be a pretty quick feeling bike. On the large, the effective top tube is around 550 with the reach coming in at 390. And then the stack comes in at 569, which is just very low. It's not all that different. I think I almost feel like I could have gotten an extra large and maybe been a little happier with that. On the extra large, the effective top tube is 15 mils longer, which I could obviously effectively change with a shorter stem, but the stack is 30 mils higher at 601. So, you know, trade-offs there. I maybe should have sized up if I had been looking at that, especially because I will definitely be running it with flat bars. One final thing I will mention is if you pay attention to crank arm length, on the medium, it's 165, large is 170, and extra large comes in with a 175. So pretty cool that they're doing size-specific crank lengths on there, given how shorter people typically have shorter legs and may want to spin tighter circles. But yeah, that's, I think, what was missing from the video. It's a little steep and loose for this big old chain ring. Honestly though, it's doing much better than I expected. Again, these are 650B, so the gearing doesn't need to be quite as low. The sword shifting is actually pretty impressive for such wide range and how well it's shifting. That's pretty awesome. You do kind of have to get used to the fact that they're 2 separate things. Shimano or SRAM, it's a little more, when you push the lower one, you don't have to be like right on it. With this one you do, because there's a big gap. But, you know, something you can get used to. Ooh, that's low down there. This stack is very road bikey, very traditional gravel bike. I even have the stem, you know, flipped up, so it's a little higher than it would be otherwise. Yeah, this is, I mean, more of your typical, I'm on a gravel bike type feel. Low stack, a little bit longer stem. Even the State, the 4130 all-road, is a little more relaxed. Let's see, this is a steep hill. I am trying to use their flat pedals, which is very not what I normally use. So it's a little weird to pedal without, a little slippery, without being able to kind of pull up on the pedals as well. If you're wondering how I feel, holy, this is steep. These brakes are not bedded, and I am like basically bent in half. Ooh. Okay, that wasn't that bad, I guess. Mud. Yeah, the shifting is blowing my mind. I'll also say I can feel the difference in the tubing, the fact that this has some budding. It is much smoother than some of the cheaper 4130 chromolyes I've ridden. Those can just be overly stiff and a little bit abusive. This has a little bit of a softer touch to it. Wow, this is steep. Let's see what the grade is. That's at least 11%, 13, 15. Yeah, I don't have the legs for that right now. Maybe if I was clipped in. Okay, yeah, my Wahoo is registering 22%. Holy. I just keep thinking, this is just a very well riding bike. I'm not getting any crazy noises. I just feel comfortable. Nothing's really like wonky. It's got a threaded bottom bracket. Man, there's just so many things about it that just kind of blow my mind for the price. Even the saddle, I don't see a brand on it, but it's got kind of that split in the middle, which I think helps relieve some pressure. I'm not really a saddle guy. It's very comfortable. Not that I've really gone that far. If it weren't for these low bars on that low stack, I could see myself putting a lot of hours in on this. All right, let's get some more traditional gravel in. Man, those the button shifters are kind of different. I keep pushing the wrong one. I've mentioned this before, but some of my earliest gravel riding experience and ATV type stuff was on a 2008 Trek X01. I used it mostly as a road bike, but I had some gravelly tires. It didn't clear very wide. I think the widest I could fit was 35, but this reminds me so much of that. A little more refined, obviously, and I feel like the discs brakes are a million times better. Some might disagree with that, but very similar vibes. You could almost use this as a cyclocross bike. Just a lively ride. It weighs 26 pounds, at least the medium does, so I would guess this is only half a pound more, maybe a pound at the very most in the large. You feel it. It doesn't feel like a super light bike. These tires are fast rolling though, very much like a file pattern tread. But I think if you're looking at a chromoly bike you're not exactly like looking for something to be really racy on or to worry about the weight. There's actually quite a bit of washboardiness in here, and it's pretty comfortable. All of that comes down to tire pressure. So having a 50 millimeter tire is gonna help because you can run lower pressures, you have more volume. I do think a lot of it is the frame here though. Wide tires can only mask so much of a frame's ride feel. All right, so we're back in the shop. I know that ride was a little shorter than I normally do. Those trails are just way too muddy, so not able to go up there. But it was still enough to get a great first impression of this bike. And if you could tell, what my sense is that due to the geometry, this has more of a traditional gravel bike feel. Now that can be adjusted a little bit with riser bars. You can see over there, I've got the Redshift top shelf on the State 4130 right now. If I swap those over to here, that would give a much more relaxed fit. And then in combination with the large tires and all the racks and everything like that, this could make for a really comfortable bike for all day rides. And I think over at Primos, that's kind of their goal with it, is to make a little bit of a do everything type of bike, but it is still, again, you can't really overcome geometry. That's the core of the bike that gives it all of the behavior it has. I'm really excited to do some more long-term testing on this, set it up in a few different ways, see how it does reliability-wise, maybe throw a different wheel set on there with 700C and see how that feels, or just some knobbier 650B tires and put it to a little more of an aggressive test. I know for sure, first thing I'm gonna be doing is swapping these bars out, or maybe just the stem for now. I might just do the stem, try and get it a little bit shorter and a little bit taller. It's not all that long, but the stack's so low, I think I need to shorten it up to make it a little more comfortable. As I mentioned, the micro shift has been really impressive over even that short ride, as well as just kind of riding it around my property, making sure it's dialed in, that type of a thing. But anyway, that's kind of my first impression, first look at this bike. If you want to see the full long-term review, be sure to subscribe so that you see that pop up in your feed. And if you want to support me, buy some stickers, leave a super thanks, like this, share it, spread the word, that kind of a thing. Thanks for watching, and let me know what you think of this bike down in the comments, especially keeping in mind the price point, because I think that's where Primos has really nailed this. I would guess if I had to go and look at comparable things, I would have said this would be more like 1,500 minimum. So 800 is a smoking deal. But thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.